Wow, Dean. That is such a human, endearing, emotional sleigh ride. Just so many cool things in this score. Like I feel like this is our ongoing conversation. Like we get together every year or so, and I look at your challenge entry, and it just sort of furthers the conversation every time. And it looks like you've taken a lot of advice to heart, and you've also done what seems like a ton of development and perhaps some of your own personal score study and so on. And it all just really feels fantastic. It's so good from beginning to end. I kind of don't know where to start. I mean, I have so many things to say about every single section, but I'll try not to make it a 2 hour lecture. Yeah, I know you're saying, oh yeah, no, go ahead. That's all right, Thomas. Okay, well, let's start out. All right, just here at E and really kind of look at everything and how it's all working. All right. And to do that, of course, we have to check out how you are setting everything up. Um, yeah, with the glissandos and the yeah, so you have stopped and open horn on the for the fourth horn that would make them very happy to not have to play stop down there. And of course, considering that a lot of those pitches are being doubled by second trombone. Yeah, I think it works out really really nicely. Okay, but all right, so it's a good it's it's actually the opposite in a lot of ways of non decrescendo. It's actually um, adding on crescendo here, and I'm not sure that you need to do that. I'll mention it here just in case I forget to say it later, and that is I feel that the trumpets are just not enough here, even with them blasting. Even if you turned it up to triple F or something, I think that you need a more solid sound here. Even if you don't end up holding those pitches, like for instance, you could have the trombones chip in and go, bum 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 bum, and then and then just drop down to chunk 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 chunk. Right. I just think it needs a little bit more weight. All right. So I think that this actually works really nicely. I would love it if you had some destination dynamics here, right? How like your diminuendo down to what, right? Pianissimo, I would say, at least in all these parts. Maybe even triple P in your brass. So that really it really pulls out, gets really soft, so that we can hear this tubular bell clang as soon as possible. I would say. Now here, like if you're not going to have any fermata on the dotted half note here, then you don't need it on this dotted quarter rest. Because they're and it doesn't quite really matter for the player. They're it's not like they have to really count or worry about it. So just leave these dotted quarter notes without the dotted quarter rests without any fermata. It's mathematically incorrect, right? The fermata starts in the middle of the bar. So yeah, so don't dole it out here. All right. All right, so yeah, so starting off with solo double bass, which is awesome. I don't know if you're a double bass player, Dean. I don't remember. I think we talked about it once, what your instrument was, but I think that this is really cool. Ben Sostenuto, I would say also espressivo. Actually, it's yeah, and maybe even like a crescendo hairpin from the beginning, and then more here. I like the fermata on this note. That's cool. Yeah, and I don't think that requires a fermata on the tubular bell part either necessarily. I think it's just like just a momentary bit of flair for the double bassist. And it works really nice with the bowing scheme, you know. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, right? So that all fits right into the bowing. All right, so we get to this point here, and I think that like what you really need to do is watch out about the functions of the parts and the dynamic balance here, right? This is really gorgeous, what you're asking your violins to do, but the melody is in the violas and the cellos, right? And it's a beautiful little voice crossing here with the violas on the bottom B and the cellos on the top B and so on. And I think that these parts should flow into each other, should sort of assimilate into each other. So it's, you know, yeah, it's cool the way that this is scored, but if the parts here, these melodic parts could get to, let's say that this is, you know, piano, mezzo piano, whatever, and then it fades out, like just give it longer, and then these parts fade into a piano espressivo here by here, not later. Then I think that this will really, really work beautifully. You know, bum bum, and then you've got the harp coming in, da 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 da, clawing. It's just really nice, and these two antique cymbal hits right here. It's just so gorgeous. Yeah, and then some solo cello, along with English horn. Yeah, once again, voice crossing. English horn on the bottom, solo cello on top. That's really a lovely sound. However, you must not ever forget in here that the upper parts here are accompaniment, and the lower parts and some central parts, the lower parts are the melody, right? So you just really have to watch out so that the upper parts do not overwhelm the melody. I think that the slurring here should match in English horn and cello, especially if the English horn is supporting the cello from below, right? You really want them to match. You don't want the English horn to be like peanut butter below the cellos who are, you know, the cellist who has to bow, right? I think it should match together really beautifully. And these parts, like if this is piano espressivo, then I'm sorry, but your flute and your clarinet have got to be pianissimo. All right, they just have to be softer. I mean, no reason why you couldn't bring this up to mezzo piano, right? And then have these parts be at piano. But I think that just keep the same vibe all the way through. It's better to have piano, like a piano espressivo solo, right? I think that's a better dynamic to start from. Give both of your parts here, English horn and the cello. Give them both the same dynamic markings, the same nuances, and then keep your upper parts at pianissimo, I think. And then just have them here. They could just tail the flute could just fade out a little bit at the end. You won't need the pianissimo marking, and here you could just leave out the fade out, right, and just have it continue on at pianissimo. So I would just say, like, really watch out if you are, once again, like, you want your English horn to double the horn here and maybe give it a little bit of flavor, but it's just it won't be visible, or won't really be audible. But like, that you have a, yeah, I mean, we've got a B, right? So the lowest note is just barely in there. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So just, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of weight on one note, really, thinking about it. Bass trombone. I mean, I would really prefer trombone on this rather than bass trombone. Sorry, no offense, bass trombonist. And fourth horn and English horn. I wonder if you even need any trombone on there at all. But this E here could be played by trumpet. And then this part here could be played by maybe by first trombone, and this could be played by second trombone or something. I don't know. I just feel it just needs to be a little lighter, right? Not and not like there's when you push the bass trombone up into its higher register, it becomes a little bit more urgent, right? Whereas I think you want a more relaxed sound here. Then there's the final detail of like you're kind of turning this into smooth, portato, and then smooth. I think the portato part should have its own slur. So ta, ta. Do you see what I mean? All right. Yeah. And then horns, oboes. Yeah. 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 Bum 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 ba dum. See, this is the part right in here where like the balance can start to be more universal across all the parts, right? Rather than worrying about the upper part so much being, a little bit submerged. Here I would say you can come up to, all of the voices being piano and the main thing is to get this voice crossing, not voice crossing, this implied leap in here. And I think that it's scored pretty well considering the stacked horns and oboes and so on. I think that it's a really beautiful color. This though, that you've got this beautiful color in here, but this roll on the timpani, it just really, it's like it's really kind of getting in the way from us being able to just really, savor the flavor right in here. Could this be handled by maybe tremolo in your cellos? Or maybe pianissimo, right? You're saying dolcissimo, but I mean, I don't really see the sweetness in here. I see just more that it's interfering with your beautiful sound picture above. All right, and then here you really intensified the harmony right in here. You just really kind of loaded in all of these instruments kind of working together and so on. Clarinets and but this was nice that you faded out. I wouldn't fade out things just so much like all the way through the phrase. I would say like fade out from here or fade out from here, right? Maybe here, like fade out from there. Okay. And then these, then it just makes more sense here rather than this kind of wisping away to nothing from the beginning of the phrase. And that's all just really lovely. And then here we've got some solo flute accompanied just by harp. That absolutely is going to work. I'm not so sold on how you scored the descending melody in here, though, right? So, in the first place, I think even if these are completely different timbres, I still think you need to dovetail. One needs to really link into the next one. I don't think it can hand off quite so gracefully. So ding, 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 ding. I almost think that what if your celesta came in and dovetailed on this note here, right? That might be a cleaner kind of a motion here. And then this is where I just feel a little just a real sense of disconnect because these pitches are so far apart. You're talking B, written B at the top of the staff in double bass is more than 2 octaves away. So I just really don't feel the connect here. I just it just really feels like this came to an end and oh by the way, the basses played a couple more notes and then that was the end of the piece. So I think that if you want to connect this, then by golly, you might have to rethink it somehow. But if you're happy with the way that turned out, then I'm happy too. Right? That's like I don't know how you would fix this. These solo markings look a little, they just really look a little too high. All right, they almost look like they're intended for the staff above. Just, if you have some close scoring like this, try to make them a little closer to the, yeah. Because like at first I thought, oh, look, he's put the solo marking below the note rather than above it. Yeah. Okay, well, hey, what a great ending. But now, why don't we drop back and check out the big push to the climax. There are so many cool things happening here. A lot of subtle scoring, a lot of intrigue, just some very, very fun things. So, the first thing I want to mention is that those little octaves in the left hand, you found such a great way of adapting them to, to basically play this root down here on F sharp. Actually, it's not really the root. It has a different function in this harmony, but to to hit this and then kind of cushion it with these beautiful soft chords in the horns and alternating with the trombones. Such a cool idea. Really, really awesome. And I appreciate how you went to the trouble here of adding an extra staff so that you could get in bass clef on your horn. But you know something? It's totally unnecessary. You could still have had on a single staff. You could have still had the 10th scored right in here. The C sharp on the bottom in just reaching down in bass clef, because it's totally readable by the player, and the other thing too is it's fine for the conductor or the score reader. You could have scored it like if you're extracting the parts from this. You could have this in bass clef, but you could just leave it in treble clef for the full score, right? Yeah, so that is just a wonderful feature of this. Okay, and then then there's just little touches, a little touch of bass drum coming in, adding a little firmness. The antique cymbals, so cool, and just a little touch of triangle and so on, and timpani coming here at the end, which we'll discuss in a minute. Yeah, and then your cascading octaves here, so nicely done. Just trading off to the next part. It's a little deceptive on the eye because, like you say, poco poco crescendo. Exactly as you should, and like it's hard to. It just sort of seems like nothing is changing, but obviously it is. The players are getting louder and louder. And I think that's really enormously effective. Also, when you start bringing in the double bass right in here, I think that works beautifully. All right, and it really is a sense of connection between the parts. Even though it's like the flute is really kind of getting a little low here. I would be tempted to think that like by the time you got to here, it would be better for things to trade over to oboe, really. Just as we're starting getting towards piano, mezzo forte, and so on and so forth. This is a little. These low F sharps become a little useless, I think, past this one. All right, and that kind of covers the left-hand functions, right? And that just leaves the melody. Oh, just really lovely. Just, really basic divisi octaves here. With, actually, we had not exhausted the left-hand functions because this is also a left-hand function. The harmony here, though, you've taken it up. You've taken everything up an octave, right? So this is up an octave from originally scored. That's fine. It isn't getting in the way of the flutes in terms of timbre. And then the clarinet's right in here. I think that's also really lovely. Yeah, so cool. Love the bass clarinet right in here, grounding everything. Yeah, da 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 da, ba da da bum. Nicely done. Just more and more energy, more and more power, but it isn't necessarily getting to be glaring, right? And you're adding more and more energy to your octaves as you go, so that really helps to make up, right? And plus the piccolo on top. One thing that I will just point out to you that I pointed out to some other participants recently, and that is, why did Barvinsky come down on his octaves here? Why did he drop them? I really have to do my research and check to whether or not I mentioned this in the pitfalls, because I have the notion that I did. He did this because he needed his left hand to be able to play both this and this, right? So the octaves could not be as high as they were at the beginning, right? When he's trading back and forth between this and then just like throwing in this note, da da, be do 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 do. Yeah, but like when the da 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 do da 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 da, so it's like he brings it closer together. There's no need for you to drop your formula, right? You could just keep the piccolo in there. It's fine. It's absolutely fine, right? Just leave your structure the way that it is. I mean, actually, I like this though. You don't have to change that, but but there's no need to cut the piccolo just because Barvinsky, when he was performing this and writing this, he, as a teenager, he couldn't figure out a way to play high enough octaves in a clean enough way. That is not your concern. You are interpreting the meaning of the score. So you can leave in the higher notes right here. But everything else is very, very awesome. So let's continue on. Oops. So, so you have this massive roll in the harp. So I mean, just barely will be able to contribute to. I mean, it'll make a sound, right? And then you very wisely leave out the harp except for glissandos once you get to the real amazing, awesome part. But this is, I've recommended this strategy to you before, and so like far be it from me to tell you to not do it. I think it works really, really great. One thing that I would say about this, and I'm sure you were, I'm sure you had a feeling that I would bring it up. That is, if you could just have like a, I mean, I know the harmony here is damn confusing, but if you could just have one approach to it, do you know what I mean? Like, here you're dealing with naturals and flats and things, and then here you go to sharps, and I know. I mean, it's a way to try to avoid double sharps and interpret things enharmonically and everything else and flats and but there's a certain excitement to the sharps and the double sharps, just like really twisting, like twisting up the dial, as opposed to just kind of sagging down a little bit to interpret it as flats. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so. I've referred to this part as like the Ravel section, right? Because it really reminds me of his kinds of chords. And, wow, is it ever when you do this kind of stuff? I think that this works gorgeously well. And I love the violas in here. I think that this is also fantastic, and it's a good preview of coming attractions, right? It just really sets up the listener well. It's just so well done, Dean. And and then like you've got the bass clarinet and bassoons working together along with the cellos and the double basses. So like recently mentioned, I'd seen like these kind of arcing octaves and so on and so forth in cello parts, and they're not totally like it. The my main objection was that they were slurred, right? But this is okay. I think that this is doable, right? You got the open string in the middle, and then you just you hit this fingered jump up, and you get this on the A string, and you come back, and so on. So I think that it's totally doable, especially if I think that the cellist can put in their thumb note on the C string, and then just kind of reach over and get this D. Correct me if I'm wrong, Peter. So but like this has got to be Divisi. Just because there is a string in the way, right? Although, thinking about it, yeah, no, there's a string in the way. You can't, you know. I mean, you could possibly tune your C extension to have its lowest note as D, right? But it's just fiddly because then what do you do about these E's? So, but I mean, you could have the lowest note as D, and you could finger this D on the A string, and then you could reach over and play this, but it's just a hassle, right? So this has got to be divisi. All right, but it could be that you meant this as to be an alternate note, in which case make the upper one mini note with parentheses on it, right? Which is I don't know if you've ever tried to do this before. Here's how you do that. Okay, so first of all, you can just go over here to notations. This is probably just the fastest way. Go to the type, and then select small, right? And it just selects this single one as small, and then add the parentheses, right? And then you've got it. So if that's what you meant, then that's how you do it. So always do the one that you intend as a substitute in parentheses and as a mini-headed note. Do not do the note that you actually intend, right? Which happened in a couple of scores. All right. So getting back to the scoring, here you say hiding behind the rest of the orchestra, coming forward. And I think that you're risking like somebody posting this, like taking a photo of this part and then saying do you mean you want me to actually like crawl forward through the timpani while I'm playing this? But all kidding aside, you really don't need to justify this. I think you're trying to tell me this is intentional. Like you wanted the trumpets not to be too loud yet, and then here you want them to eventually match with the rest of the orchestra. I don't really think you need to do that. I don't really see, I don't see how a forte trumpet here is necessarily hurting anything. I don't think it'll interfere with the harp if that was a concern. And I can't think of, I mean, triangle is, with this much mass, the triangle is a little useless. But I don't have a huge problem with the scoring here. Yeah, I think it's all done pretty well. All right, so moving on to our real exciting bit. Yeah. I think that the percussion in here is just awesome. Yeah, the tam-tam crashes and so on. They might be a bit loud. I'm really thinking that the tam. I mean, you can hear it in the mock-up, right? The tam-tam crash just basically blows away most of the orchestra for half a bar, and then as your ears start to recover from it, you're just starting to get the gist of it again, and then crash again. Maybe if it were a little less loud, I don't know. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe cymbal splash is enough. I don't know, but you want to do it every other time, right? Anyway, just think about what it's doing to your sound, right? And if you're happy with that, then I'm fine with it too. All right, and good up rip here on the glissando. A lot of people prefer these curvy lines, but they're completely unnecessary. All I need is just a line from here to there, right? And I would just to remind the player, give them if they're keeping track of what's going on. They probably won't need this, but they could use a diagram here, like a foot pedal diagram right here, just to sort of remind them how to set their pedals. And same thing here. All right, so now let's break this down into its constituent elements. You're really making sure that the melody does not get lost by having fortissimo trumpets and fortissimo flutes, I should say, play it an octave higher, and it just might work. Right? Like you put that much force into it, and then all these other parts that are not really settling on any particular one note, except for your low bass instruments here, if you play it that way, then I think that then the melody will come through without getting squashed too much, without getting squashed like a bug. All right, I like all the stuff that's happening in here. The oboes and clarinets going chunk, 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 chunk. It's kind of cool to put the clarinets up there, the way that they're scored. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very, very cool idea. And then English horn working together with the horns and the trombones, and this kind of agile jumping around here with the bass clarinet, pretty much just covering the second trombone part. That's all working great too. And then, wow, this would take some wood shedding. And I like the way that you have it divided up. You've got your first violins covering this part, and you got your second violins covering these octaves and so on. This is so freaking intense that even though they're octaves, and even to an extent it's kind of obvious, I would still possibly give them Divisi staves here. Do you know what I mean? Just to really, really be clear and easily readable, because it's just so intense. Even though it's octaves, it's still I would split that up into two different staves, just to be good to the players, to be nice to them. Yeah, and just what a great idea. And then ripping up, and then oh, so cool, so cool. Now, one thing that I really like about this, even though there isn't a huge, like an enormous difference with what's going on, I do like the fact that the violins sort of ease off a little bit, because it's just some kind of variation in function and color. And there are some other changes too, like bass clarinet not supporting the trombone so much, and and then after the trumpets finish what they're doing, the winds take on this different role and so on. I kind of almost wish that there had been even more variation here, leading to the variation there. I like this, da 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 da, and the timpani. It's such a cool like just really awesome pulse. Yeah. And then, like I said before, I just really, really think that you need to bulk this up. I don't think that the two trumpets are enough to really carry this. I think adding trombones at the very least, if not a couple of horns too, right? And you could even just you could even add like ba 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 from your strings, and just having them go to the this part as well. Or for that matter, you could have some of the doublings be the winds, dun dun da da, chuck 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 chuck, right? Yeah, nice bass drum scoring right in here. I think that you could just get away with forte piano, and then a roll forward rather than brrr. I think it's better to go okay, because like the subtlety of this is going to be completely lost on everybody else, right? This is lovely right in here. This kind of changing direction stuff, and then here you're telling them to damp. That's great. Yeah, and then you have your little kind of cheap rhythm right in here. That's great. Yeah, so I mean, I don't have any big issues with this. It just, I mean, yeah, I mean the texture does progress forward. To a degree, it could have been a little bit more. This high C sharp, man, that is freaking insane. I don't know about it being chop busting, but it is pretty, it's You notice that Sibelius has given it the, the Danger Will Robinson red color, right? As opposed to just like, if you're a pro, you can handle this color. But yeah, so they're just going to say, well, that's out of range. Considering the D's that Schoenberg regularly writes in his trumpet parts, maybe not so bad. But I'll tell you, it's nobody's going to look forward to that with any love. Okay. Maybe this is a job for, E flat trumpet man, right? I mean, thinking about like how could you work in an E flat trumpet, you know? I mean, look, technically, this challenge allows you to have three trumpet players. And yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the third trumpet player is the third trumpet player who plays the auxiliaries. Because, like, if all they do is just play that one part for the entire work, then that's fine. They're the third trumpet player. That's their job, right? Step in, save the day, patch over the hole, do whatever, and then, go back to reading their book in the corner. Yeah, So, yeah. So just score this on an E flat or a D trumpet, and then like maybe you can double up right here, and then like maybe on some of these you can go back to octaves here with your first trumpet, maybe doubling the E flat trumpet. That might be a way to go. Yeah, so, and then you could like do the same thing here, like starting from here, have your D or E flat trumpet and first trumpet and C playing together, right? And then from here, drop your first trumpet down and just let the E flat trumpet take the real high stuff. Okay, that might be a way to go. You're allowed three trumpets. You could do it, and it's, that is not such a weird ask. That those high trumpets, they exist. That's their job. That's their function. They can do it as beautiful middle register too. And now back to the very beginning of the piece. And I mean, I really love how you have, just really tried to get the most out of the first octave of both piccolo and flute. Yeah, so that's such a great idea. The breathy first octave of both instruments, so playing in octaves. Such a wonderful effect, such a magical effect. And I respect how you have toned down your A clarinets here. And then here you have English horn coming in. If you wanted an absolute beautiful seamless sound here, use bass clarinet instead. Right, so that it just really it's all part of that same clarinet sound. Yeah, and then here you're bringing in celesta. As soon as you bring in celesta, the whole context changes, right? We get less of that breathy quality, and just really becomes more about the celesta. But it's all right. I mean, it's fine. The scoring is fine, and it does sort of follow my suggestion. Treatment of the melody, representing an emotional and timbral progression. We get that just by adding the celesta in here, and then thickening up the harmony, and adding a few notes here on harp and so on. Yeah, so it doesn't feel staticky to me, and I think that with live players, just really bringing out that really I think you should just say molto espressivo on both of these parts. Just really bring out as much emotion as possible. And now, like here, I hate to say it, but you cannot go up to mezzo piano here without your flutes being sorely affected. Okay, you're just going to have a small crescendo. I mean, it's like you already sense it here. You go back down to pianissimo, right? And then here you go further softer. I just don't think it's going to balance unless you keep it softer all the way across all these lower instruments. So crescendo from here, I would say just go back to pianissimo. Then here crescendo to piano at the most, and then back again, right? So it's just because everything is in such close proximity, and you want your beautiful breathy flutes to have a chance here, have a fighting chance. And it's not so much that like necessarily that these instruments are incredibly louder than the flutes, except that they just represent cumulatively, they represent a lot of overtones that would just wallpaper over the extraordinariness of these flutes. I mean, to be completely honest, you already have Celesta sort of, sitting its, big fat, clangy behind all over, all over the piccolo and so on. So it's, it could be, it could be even lighter if you chose to, but it's all fine. Just leave it the way it is. I think there's enough emotional context, enough change, enough shifting. It really is, like, as I was saying before, it was really an emotional score. Just so many, so many wise decisions, so many, just really listening to the music and transforming what you hear and so on. It's really lovely work, Dean. I'm just really impressed with this year's entry. Not that I wasn't with previous year's entries, but really this just feels like a whole new ball game. Now, the thing that I love the most about this is the horns right in here. That's so smart, so, like, once again, wise. We have these thirds, ba 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 ba, and then the horns da da, then together, and then fading out quickly. Right, that's so cool. Yeah, and then just like building together. That works beautifully. And then oboes and octaves works brilliantly well. If you want an absolutely, completely, perfectly balanced octave here, I would say use the English horn. So that way, it will be, it will match register for register a little bit more perfectly. But there's no reason why oboes in octaves shouldn't be able to give you what you want. Oh yeah, I forgot something. I'm going to jump back really quickly. Oops. So one little thing, you need to get rid of the slur over these dotted rhythms. It's just completely antithetical to what you want to do here. I mean, yeah, I know you want this to be nice and smooth and everything, but this is the piano. These are the piano style slurs, right? So just toss them. Maybe if you want to slur up and then go ta-ta or ta-ta-ta. You know what I mean? Because like it's just turning it into mush, right? It's an artifact from the piano score. Don't use artifacts from the piano score unless they make sense with the actual wind and string parts, all right? Now here this is fine. Repeated notes, repeated dotted rhythm under a slur because it's a keyboard, right? And it's a keyboard that is very gooey, so that's perfectly fine. But don't do it over, like, you just really lose the definition from these dotted rhythms. Now this is, like, since these dotted rhythms are in a row, right, they're in sequence in terms of pitch steps, that is a different story. But when it's repeated notes, you lose the definition. All right, so back to what we were talking about. So I feel that the middle voice is beautifully handled right in here. And I think that, adding first flute to the melody here in the oboes and and then eventually here going to these octaves, this is perfectly fine. There's a little bit of low flute in there. I'm not going to crab about it. And then here, like, this is also really lovely. The way that you kept the second flute from getting too low. That's really nice. Okay, just little touches of clarinet, tracking what's going on in the horns. And then harp, basically completely taking over all of the, a transcription of the left-hand part for the original score, and this, adding this da da da. Yeah, I almost think that you should possibly reconsider this, rather than having this many notes happening at once. I mean, it is simple for the harp to play, but it might sound more graceful if you just had two notes at any given time, rather than chords walking down, or even like thirds in both hands walking down. I mean, it's perfectly possible, but I just don't think it is really natural to the whole sweep of everything that's happening here. Bass clarinet coming in and helping out is a absolutely beautiful and necessary touch. However, the more it pushes into here, the louder your harp has to get. If you want bass clarinet and mezzo forte here, then your harp had better be forte, right? Because because the bass clarinet's timbre, it's like it blends beautifully with all kinds of different instruments, and it blends beautifully with harp. But the thing is, part of that blend carries in it the danger that it will start to suck up suck the life out of the harp sound as it gets louder, right? So just really watch out for that. Yeah, but yeah, this is really lovely. The Divisi strings coming in here, pushing forwards. Does this need to be Divisi in 3 yet? All right, so yeah, I wonder if there's some way of scoring all of this where you don't have to have, where you don't need to score like this. Just, like you're adding all of these staves, one desk, Glialtri, and, and then you have like the identical part until just right at the end, right? So you can show where things are solely and so on. I just wonder if there is a way of doing this so that that you don't have to break things up so much into Divisi staves. I don't think it's really necessary. I don't know. Maybe you worked it out, and it just like that was the only way to do it. I don't really have time to go through this and just kind of check out all the different parts, but yeah. I mean, yeah, it's certainly simple. Okay, well, I won't screw around with it too much, but yeah. Okay. All right. This is all cool. Isn't it strange? Like I'm noticing with Sibelius playback, like in scoring like this, sometimes it just like seems to just lose all power and intensity. Right? It's just really, really weird. So I mean, it's not like you added mutes or anything like that, or some other kind of weird shift, but it just really felt underpowered. Um, yeah. So all weirdness of note performer playback aside, I think that this worked really, really beautifully. You know, and I really love the trade-off, the handoff to or the merging of wind to string texture and the way that it took over and everything. I think that all works beautifully. And I have to say that this is a mighty interpretation of that original arpeggiated idea, running in octaves across the whole scope of the orchestra, doubled and dovetailing into all different parts. And it actually really works. Like you can hear it in the mock-up, which I don't think is lying in this particular instance. I think that's working great. And a little touch of antique cymbal here, and then another softer one right in here. Yeah, I think that works great. And in this time, bass clarinet trading off to clarinets, trading off to flute, and so on. It works great alongside the celesta, right? So celesta has got to be at piano or mezzo piano here for this to work, right? I mean, not that it has a huge amount of range. Okay, it like you can try to get piano like celesta to play really, really softly, and it doesn't quite want to do it. Like you play it a little too slow, and it just kind of doesn't. The hammers don't hit anything. So there's a certain limitation in there, but pianissimo, the orchestral pianist will be able to handle this with no problem. I'm not so sure about the next screen. We will talk about that in a second. Yeah. So, yeah, soft sticks, right? I think We already know, right? So you don't have to tell us here. Yeah, that's all really beautiful. I think that that will work fantastically well. Yeah, and then you go to solo instruments here, and I think I suspect there's some simpler way of scoring this. All right, so here we go to like a big, beautiful celesta solo. And before we look at the celesta solo, let's look at all of the other elements happening on this page. You've got your kind of heart in the mouth middle register piccolo solo here, which I think is absolutely perfect. It's just such a great register for all of those notes to be sitting in. And then you've got violas, an octave lower, playing in treble clef. Um, you know, uh, and then an octave lower than that, you have got your bassoons, and it's just such a wonderful combination. Because the bassoons will radiate warmth upwards to the violas, and the violas will radiate that kind of slight edge that they've got upwards to the piccolo. Yeah, it's just such a fun idea. All right, so that's our melody. Then we've got the horns covering those thirds, and we've also got like some octave G's here, kind of rattling away in second violins, cellos, and then the sort of restless octaves in here, and made all the more restless by the timpani roll, which is in triple P, right? And here is there's been some octave rolls in this, or sorry, octave rolls. There have been some timpani rolls in this section in recent evaluations, and I feel that here it works really perfectly because it is so undertoned. It is like really, it is really really down there, just right at the edge of being of perceptibility, right? And I think that that works really really well. Now, trading off horns to trombones just gives it a slightly edgier quality, right? Just like you traded off before horns to bassoons, that worked great. So this also works great. And then dun da da, yeah, beautiful color right in here. All right, but nobody's paying any attention to all of that because what are they doing? They're listening to the celesta player. Your orchestral pianists just work out and have a blast. Now, this is kind of on the edge of what's playable on celesta. So, like, I don't know if you've ever played a Fender Rhodes, but imagine a Fender Rhodes, playing this on the Fender Rhodes. And then imagine playing on it when the action is kind of a slight mess and trying to get all of this to sound perfect. Right, so there are certain parts in here that would work fine. Like this would more or less work fine. I'm not so sure about the roll and I think that would still be okay. But some of these other things, like you're kind of asking the right hand to do all the work. Like right in here, you have this big roll so that the celesta's hand can't really get away from it, right? When you start to go to consecutive thirds and fourths here, the player just kind of has no choice but to jump down here and hit this roll and so on. Does this need to actually even be played? Right? Is this necessary? Could it be possible that that your celesta player could just follow this together? All of these things, all of these runs here. I'm sort of reminded of a very hurt Mozart writing to his father about Clementi and about how he had seen some scores of Clementi and declared them to be impossible to play because they had really fast consecutive sixths. And then, he had just really got this. People were calling Clementi the next Mozart, right? And that made Mozart annoyed, to put it mildly. So he saw the sonata. He says, "Oh, this is really not possible." And then he went and saw Clementi play, and he saw that Clementi was faking his sixths, his consecutive sixths, or like not playing them as fast as it was scored. As the tempo would be interpreted in the piano score. They didn't have metronomes yet, but pretty obvious what an allegro was and so on, and a vivace. So Mozart sort of triumphantly wrote back to his father that Clementi was a fraud. So think about that next time you teach the Clementi sonatina in C to your students. That Mozart thought he was a jerk. Anyway. But I mean, I think that from Clementi's perspective, he just totally respected Mozart, and like I don't know if they had a chance to meet, but if they did, Clementi would probably just be all over him, and just saying, "Wow, you're the greatest," and so on. So I'm looking at these consecutive sixths, and I'm thinking about that episode in Mozart's life. Yeah, and you might be thinking, well, look, it's all white keys, right? Because we have F naturals and so on, and so maybe it could almost be done as a white key glissando. Not really. If you have ever played, like, well, that's why I'm going back to the Fender Rhodes thing. It's Celesta is got one of the most unforgiving actions of any keyboard I have ever played, and I have played a lot of keyboards. I have played a Buklavox. Okay, that's like a sort of the competitor to Moog back in the 70s and late 60s. Don Bukla, I think, was his name. And I have played, I've played the chimes at in a tower. I played the keyboard that operates the chimes. I have played all kinds of, I've played Farfisas. I've played Fender Rhodes. I've played just, about all different kinds of keyboards. And I got to say that Celeste is one of the, it's a very demanding kind of action. It isn't a light, it isn't like a spinet or something like that. Or it just is real. I mean, it's really hard to explain. I think. Yeah, I mean, best thing to do is just go hunt up somebody playing on actually watch somebody playing a Celesta, and you kind of get the idea of what its limitations are, right? So that is what I will leave you with, is just that this, this kind of beautiful fluid playing is really tricky. You know what I mean? And and like it seems to me like you've got some piano chops, and for you as a pianist this might be really easy, or might be a challenge. Like it's sort of like to me it looks like an excerpt from a piano concerto, but it might be really tricky on Celesta. Now, having said that, Dean, you might say, well, I play orchestral piano and you're wrong. So, and that's fair too, but I just my experience with Celesta, I just feel that this is that you might need to simplify things quite a bit. All right. But I better stop there because I think that I've said everything that I can say, except for to say thank you, Dean, for being a part of this, for being a part of this orchestration challenge, and for the way that you've developed and you've made that development part of this challenge over the years, and your keen perceptions and your artistry and all that other stuff, sharing that with us, it's so important. And for helping me support that appeal. I don't want to make it too big of a deal about it and keep repeating it, but I think we all know that that was something that we needed to do. We're not sitting here patting ourselves on the back saying how great we are. We are thinking about them, and about how we could possibly help them, and I think we did. All right, I think we did something good for them. All right, it's not, doesn't mean that we just rest on our laurels and say we did everything we could, because there's still more that could be done. And if people out there have not yet heard about the appeal from the Lisa Batiashvili Foundation, I just check out the info below and help out some of those musicians if you can. So with that, I will just say thanks to all the Patreon supporters who had helped, just like Dean did, to make this a success with their very cool entries, and all the website subscribers as well. All of my viewers out there who are aren't really participating but are just enjoying watching everything. You guys are awesome, and I'm so happy to be just tearing through all of these scores right here at the end of the year, getting them done so that the 2022 Orchestration Challenge can stay in 2022, and I can go on vacation on Boxing Day and just have some fun, meet some beautiful wildlife, and hang out on some beaches and some forests, and do some cycling around the South Island. Really, really looking forward to it. But before I have to do that, I've got about 25 more scores to look at. So everybody hang on because there's a ton more stuff to go. So I hope you enjoyed this day of 3 full score evaluations in a row, and I've got another big day coming up, every day for the next 10 days or the next 8.5 days. All right. See you guys soon.